right, all right. How are we doing? How are we doing tonight? What is it? December 19th, 6 days before Christmas. Hopefully, we're all getting our shopping in. We know David Stearns went to go shopping today, and he came up with Griffin Canning. Griffin Canning. So, how do we all feel about the latest starting pitcher that the New York Mets signed today? They signed Griffin Canning to a 1-year, $4 million deal, $4.25 million. So, wow. I mean, the first thing when I heard about this signing, I'm like, all right. I mean, honestly, I don't know too much about him, but all right, let's dive deep into Griffin Canning. Maybe this guy's got some pretty decent stuff. Let's give him a chance. But you know what? On the surface, this move screams David Stearns. Screams a David Stearns move. Folks, honestly, the more we see a guy like Griffin Canning during the year, I'd say the year didn't go so well. This guy is a 9 or a 10 in your depth. I mean, honestly, I hear people saying, oh, he's going to be a fifth starter. Honestly, in a rotation like the New York Mets, you compare that to the Dodgers, you don't want this guy as your fifth starter. If he is your fifth starter, we are in trouble. But folks, at the end of the day right now, David Stearns is building, right? You could take two different philosophies. Right now, if you're a Mets fan, you can either panic or you could be patient. Right? Obviously, the New York Mets last year went 2 games shy of the World Series, so they did well last year. This year, we already signed Soto, and then you can kind of say we signed Soto, and right now we left a lot to be desired. I like the Clay Holmes signing. I think Clay Holmes developing another pitcher or two. We might have something there. But I'll tell you what, that starting rotation right now, Griffin Canning aside, because he is going to be a depth piece, just a depth piece. There's a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of work to do because there are really no guarantees in that starting rotation. You got Kodai Senga, your supposed ace, coming back from a very serious injury-plagued season where he only pitched 5 innings. Obviously, we're converting Clay Holmes from a closer to a starter. So how reliable is he? Frankie Montas, you're hoping that he can go in that, positive trajectory, but you're not sure. Then you got David Peterson, who had a good 2 or 3 months. And then you got McGill. And then you got guys like Blackburn and Griffin Canning. Looking at him last year, he went 6-13 with a 5.19 ERA. 5.19 ERA. The only thing Canning kind of did well last year was he threw some innings. He threw 171 innings and he pitched in 32 games. That's actually very good for a major leaguer. Very, very good. I mean, if you deep dive into his pitches, he's got, good pitch mix. But, his fastball kind of gets crushed. His changeup, I would say, from looking at his, stats, is his best pitch by far. But, this is a guy that you hope David Stearns and the pitching lab see something there and they can do something with it. I mean, coming from LA, they're not really known as a pitching-rich team. Actually, they've been searching for pitching for years and years. So that's not a team that I'm like, oh, that pitcher stunk on that team. That's all he is. I mean, maybe he's a guy who could pitch to a mid-4 ERA, and he's a guy who can improve his fastball. I mean, he can't go backwards. His fastball sucks. His fastball is one of the most hittable pitches in all of baseball, and that really hurt him. I mean, going back last year when I was reviewing his numbers, Canning, he started off bad. He had a good May. May was actually a pretty good month. May he went 1-1 with a 2.60 ERA. So May was a good month, but that was it. April was bad. June was even worse. July was bad. August was bad. And, that gets you to a very bad season when you have, only one good month. You're gonna really stink. You're gonna really stink. But supposedly this was the worst year of his career. He's still 28 years old. People say he's got a bit of deception when he pitches. So I mean, if you can improve this guy, and David Stearns, he takes pride in project. I mean, David Stearns, he loves projects. So David Stearns, if he could tweak this guy even a little, and you get some production out of him, I would say it's a decent signing. You paid him $4 million, and the guy threw 170 innings last year. 170 innings. Now, I said in the beginning of the video, if the Mets are going to do good next year, probably a guy like Griffin Canning isn't going to go throw a lot of innings. So, we'll see it. We'll see what it is. But very early, we are learning what the philosophy are with David Stearns. Last year, seeing what David Stearns did with his first couple signings, obviously Severino, obviously Manaea, we didn't really invest that much in starting pitching, and we're not investing in long-term contracts, right? So you're seeing the philosophy of Stearns. I think Stearns is a guy, and as really kind of, different as this sounds, I think Stearns is a guy who looks as pitchers as almost being interchangeable. I really do. I think he's a guy who can look at a bargain or look at the bargain basement of pitching and feels he can pick out respective guys in each year and turn them into a serviceable pitcher. I think that's how David Stearns views it. And I think him giving, let's say, a Corbin Burns 7-8 years at $30 million a pop, I think, he views it as a crazy high risk move, which, you've seen it in the last couple of years. Let's just say Noah Syndergaard. A couple years ago, the guy was 29 years old. He went to the Angels. A couple years later, he's out of baseball. Even another prospect that the Mets had, Michael Fulmer. A couple years ago, he had a great year on Tigers. He's out of baseball. So you see, even these guys who get to the top level, they're really hit or miss. They're hit or miss. They could be at the top of the game 1 year and 2 years later be out of baseball. Now, if you give them a 5, 6, 7, 8 year contract, you could be saddled with huge baggage for a very, very long time. Like I'll say it, Max Fried, Yankees, they pivoted to Max Fried, serviceable pitcher, but giving him more than a 5-year contract, I think they're going to regret it. I just do. He's not a guy that I could see him pitching to around age 40. Really. And what is the evidence as of late? You had Scherzer, you have Verlander, but more often than not, pitchers aren't pitching into their late 30s, at least as starters. You see some relievers, but not as starters. So I can kind of get on the bus with David Stearns with that regard. All right, everybody, hope we're having fun. 1 o'clock in the morning, just saying hello. We have Explosive here. Joey, as always, Swish Flames Podcast, Jay, David, Scott. Hopefully we are enjoying the night. This isn't a move like, really breaking down this move in terms of, okay, what would I grade it? Well, this is a classic David Stearns move. Now, do I expect this guy to be in the starting rotation? No. This is a guy who, like I said, is going to be an 7, 8, 9 type of pitcher. If you have a couple injuries, or if you have a double header, or if you have those type of situations, you'll have this guy make spot starts. You're going to have this guy make spot starts. So are you going to use him frequently? No, I don't think so. So he's an insurance move. He's a guy, like I said, you're going to use in those special circumstances. And you paid him $4 million. You paid him $4 million. So I can't really go crazy. If David Stearns believes putting him in the pitching lab, working with him and tweaking some of his pitches, if they think there's value there, then, how could we disagree? I mean, the $4 million you give, you got to give this move like a C plus grade, C plus grade, because also too, even if your pitching lab is, working with him, we are investing time, we are investing resources. So I would say if the guy turns out to be a failure, that would be the biggest pie in the face, that you invested your time, you invested $4 million, and you invested some resources on this guy, whereas you probably could have invested those time and research on another guy. But at the end of the day, how much is that really worth? How much is that really worth? All right. Jay, you're right. Small depth moves, which also means he's an additional trade bait. We got Soto. Are you serious? We're mad at Stearns. Promise you we trade Marte, McNeil, and other foreign A's. And you know what, Jay? That's actually a really good point. Let's just say you take a guy, you pay him $4 million, and you turn him into something. You're right. That is additional trade bait. That's a really great way of looking at it. And also, too, if you look at it from a wins perspective, right? Honestly, right now, as this team stands right now, currently, I believe we're a 90-plus win team. You got to remember, we're getting Senga back. Senga didn't pitch all of last year, right? So, if you want to look at it like this, as of right now, Senga replaces Manaea. I think Senga, he's either just as good. He's in that type of level. So Senga replaces Manaea. So we don't really step back there. And if you're a guy who thinks Clay Holmes is better than Severino, or maybe Montas is better than Severino, our rotation, I don't think we're taking that much of a step back. But I do think we do have some significant moves coming. And then you add Soto into the offense. Our team right now, as we stand, you got Soto. He's an 8-WAR player, so that gives you an additional 8 wins. Yeah, you took Manaea off the team. You took Severino off the team. We don't have Alonso, but then you add Senga to the mix, and you add Soto to the mix. So that's why I think right now, as it stands, we're around a 90-win team. But that's not the goal. The goal is not to win 90-win game. The goal is to win the World Series. So that's why we have to keep building, keep improving. And also, too, I know these moves, there are a faction of the fan base who love these moves. I'm a type of person, I don't really love these moves. I understand these moves, getting value guys, trying to build these value guys into something greater. I like maybe investing a little more in proven talent, but it is what it is. If you have a payroll of around $250 million, you can't pay everyone $20 to $30 million. So I understand that. And investing in everyday guys like Soto, it makes more sense. But, at the end of the day, we have to get incrementally better. And that's what David Stearns is elite at doing. Now, like I said, the bar. Let's just say, I've heard this too, the panic camp. There's 2 camps I'm going to keep mentioning. You be patient, or people who are panicking, which really doesn't make sense. I think most of the fan base, I would say 60 to 70%, is probably more in the lines of patient, but there's always going to be people who panic. Now, in that camp, you have people are saying, you know what? Last year, did we get lucky? Lindor homers against the Braves. We make the playoffs. If Lindor doesn't homer against the Braves, we might not even make the playoffs. Then, in the first round, Alonso hits that homer against Devin Williams. if he doesn't hit that homer against Devin Williams, we don't even advance out of the wild card round. So did we have some big hits that overshadowed some of our weaknesses? Yeah, I think it did happen. We had a lot of clutch moments. Do I want to rely on, a homer at the end of the season to get us into the playoffs? No, I'd rather, get in, and I'd rather, have more of a guarantee. Last year was, we had a little magic going, with Iglesias, Lindor moving to the leadoff spot. Can you count on that every year? I don't think you can count on the magic. I think you can count on the type of clubhouse that you build, the type of chemistry, the type of culture that I think you can count on. But, you can't, get around the fact that we did have magical moments. So that's why at the end of the day, I do want David Stearns and the fan base to recognize that we need talent. Now the Yankees, they pivoted from Soto. They got Fried. They got Devin Williams. They got Bellinger. I would say the move I liked the most was Williams. The Mets, supposedly, they were in on Devin Williams. But the thing is, it's basically, what do you want to do? Do you want to give up the couple assets in the Devin Williams trade and lose those assets potentially down the line? You can use those same assets to get a starting pitcher. Maybe you put those assets in the Luis Castillo trade or a Dylan Cease. I'd rather probably use those players to get a starting pitcher. I mean, a guy like Devin Williams, I was looking at some of his advanced numbers. Devin Williams is nasty. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. He's elite. He's going to be a free agent in 1 year. So that is something to remember. So if you can give up prospects to get a guy like Castillo who is signed for 3 years, that's more value. Well, Devin Williams, he has that nasty changeup. Last year, surprisingly, he's the guy who almost uses that changeup almost 60% of the time. But last year, he came back from an injury, and surprisingly, he used that changeup 46% of the time. So significantly less. So, I always wonder, the Brewers, they traded Hader away, and, Hader still had his moments, but he wasn't nearly as nasty as he was with the Brewers. So, and I always wonder with the Williams situation, they could have waited. They could have waited and traded him at the deadline, maybe for a bunch of teams who were desperate. I didn't think the Yankees blew. It was a good package. It wasn't great. Cortez has 1 year left before free agent, and then they got a decent prospect, not a great prospect. So I always wondered, why didn't they wait till the deadline? Is there something significant? Is there something, I'm not going to say wrong, but is there something that is concerning with Williams? So that's why, looking at the situation, maybe I'm not so upset, that we didn't get a guy like Williams. Plus, like I said, we get to save our prospects for other starting pitchers. Crispy, my guy. What's up, Pastor Dominic? Sorry I'm late for the sermon. I'm not impressed with this signing. The Mets do not have nearly enough pitching. We still need 2 top-end starters and a setup man. You know what? We need a lot. You are so right. And I've been saying this for the longest time. We need 2 more top-of-the-line pitchers. I'm not sure if we're going to go there, but that's what I believe we need. We need 2 top-of-the-line pitchers. As you mentioned, we need some help in the bullpen, yes, but we also need help in the lineup as well. We don't have a first baseman right now. Who's going to be – are we going to have a DH? Are we going to have Siri playing center field? Like, there are 2 or 3 big question marks in the lineup. Like you mentioned, there are bullpen questions, and there's still starting pitching questions. So I don't think Stearns is anywhere near finished. It looks like payroll-wise, we are around $250 million, $245 to $250 million. So, in terms of what we spent last year, we still have a lot of money to play with. We'll see. I think David Stearns lives by one philosophy, and he said it at the press conference last week, and he said it many times throughout his tenure. He says that his big philosophy is he has to be patient. So, if this is his philosophy and this is how he operates, even though, in my opinion, getting like past Christmas, I consider that very late. But it's also dependent on the market. I mean, you still got a lot of players out there. You got, Corbin Burns, obviously. You got a lot of players still on the trade market available. And it seems like these teams surprisingly are shopping a lot of their starting pitching talent. So in terms of getting a starter, who knows? Maybe that perfect deal will be out there later on. And then another team that blew their prospects or made that free agent signing, they won't be in the running for that said player. I mean, the Red Sox, they are being ultra aggressive and they have a very good farm system. What I did like to hear is the Mets were in the Crochet sweepstakes, and the I'm not sure if this is true. One of the journalists said that the Chicago White Sox, this is the package they were looking at, and I'm so glad the Mets didn't do this. They wanted Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams for Garrett Crochet. So, that was the type of package that they were looking at for Garrett Crochet. I mean, that's not what I want to do. I mean, I'm not trading away 6 years of Brandon Sproat, and I'm not trading away 6 years of Jet Williams for 2 years of Garrett Crochet. And that's a guy who's had injury history. I'm just not doing it. I'm not doing it. So, I don't mind us walking away if a team is trying to fleece us. Like David Stern says, that in that situation, patience will pay off. Sorry about that. Just trying to get out of the way. Okay, so this is the Baseball Savant page of Griffin Canning. So from his 2024 profile, it's not that impressive. It is not that impressive at all. Really, it's not. The only thing is his off-speed run value is in the 87th percentile, but everything else, is bottom of the barrel. His fastball velocity, I checked in the last couple of years. I mean, 1 year, this year it's 93.4, but his fastball velocity has ranged from like 93 miles per hour to 95 miles per hour. So, I mean, he's got, he's not a fireballer, but he does have a little more in the tank than 93. His chase rate is in the 54th percentile. Not very impressive. He's got 5 different pitches, a four-seamer, a changeup, a slider, a curve, and a sinker. Only uses the sinker 1% of the time. But you know what? With the Mets, I say the Mets are trying to build a really good defense with Lindor at shortstop. And they are really kind of big on ground balls. So maybe sinker is something that they can tweak a little. Maybe he uses that a little more. Changeup, he uses that 27% of the time. That is supposedly his best pitch. I mean, look at this. Like, literally, if you look at his four-seam fastball last year got absolutely crushed. This is actually nuts. The expected batting average on his four-seam fastball was 273. 273. The expected slug was 529. Not good at all. Not good at all. I mean, if you look at his changeup this year, its slug is 387. Expected batting average still not great, but it's 247, so a lot better. But if you go back to last year, that changeup had an expected batting around the same, about 346. So, I mean, like I said, it's a situation where Stern's taking this kid in the lab. He's 28 years old. He was drafted in the second round. So, he had potential. He still potentially does have potential, has something there. He was with the Angels organization mostly his entire career. So hopefully, like I said, he's a lottery ticket. He's a lottery ticket right now, and anything you get out of him would be a huge bonus. Yeah, Crispy. I see the thing about the Rangers. Yeah, I am a Rangers fan, but quite honestly, I haven't really been paying attention to hockey lately. I mean, my prediction, if I had to predict right now, I think the Mets are going to make some moves, but I think we're going to make some big moves. And I always envisioned us getting 2 elite starting pitchers, whether that's Castillo and Cease, or Castillo and some other pitcher. They might not even be available on the market as we speak. But I really can't see. Look at it from this perspective. Juan Soto. Is this a move Juan Soto would be like, oh my God, David Stearns? You got Griffin Canning? Is that a guy we're gonna go after? No, I don't think this is something that I think Juan Soto was sold something special. I think he was told something internally that we don't know. But David Stearns, you have to believe right now that he is going after something that we cannot see. That we cannot see. Sorry about that. Like if I told you right now, and there's a lot of moves left, and the market on the particular players that the Mets are interested in, the guys are just waiting out the market. Like Pete Alonso right now has no market. He has no market. Literally, the Yankees have checked in on Pete Alonso every now and then, but the Yankees are using Pete Alonso as leverage for other players in other situations. For example, the Cubs the other day. They were trying to get a better package out of the Yankees. So then the Yankees all of a sudden said, all right, now we're interested in Pete Alonso. Then the Cubs panicked and said, okay, you know what? We'll pull the trigger. So, and I'll tell you what, the Cubs, I kind of like that the Yankees, I kind of like with the Cashman, with the Cashman. I like what Cashman was doing, trying to upgrade the team and do it in an aggressive approach. But, on the Cubs' perspective, I mean, honestly, it seemed like they were trying to give Bellinger away with all cost. All cost. They paid $5 million. They're trying to tell teams, oh, don't worry, he's going to opt out. I mean, Bellinger, I got to say, in Yankee Stadium, maybe that would have been like the only places that, if I were a team, I'd be like, okay, if I'm the Yankees, yeah, he's a lefty. I think he'll play well in Yankee Stadium. But the more and more I gave thought, because I was potentially exploring, all right, maybe the Mets should go after him. But if you look at his advanced numbers, I mean, they are super, super scary. So hopefully, but with the Yankees, maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. It seems like they're trying to make a whole slew of moves. So if one move doesn't work out, maybe something else works out. But as a Mets fan, guys like that, high-risk guys that you're going to have to pay $20-something million to, it doesn't look like David Stearns is going in that direction. Any guy that we pay a decent amount, I think David Stearns wants to have more of a guarantee that we're going to get that type of production. And this is why I think he's playing hardball with Pete Alonso. A contract that David Stearns is trying to get with Pete Alonso is around 4 years, $22 million. Pete Alonso and Scott Boras, they're supposedly looking for a contract around 8 years and over $200 million. So apparently the gap is very far right now. Very, very far. And, Pete, he's coming off a year where he struggled. He mightily struggled. But I think getting Juan Soto in the fold, it's very important to have a long lineup. What Pete does is he lengthens that lineup. I think Soto will definitely help Pete be a little more patient, a little more disciplined, and help Pete out with his approach. Juan Soto is a guy, he's not a pull guy. Juan Soto goes with pitches. That's what I've always wanted Pete to do, go with the pitch. He's strong enough. He can go up the middle. He can go to right field. That's how he becomes a better hitter. But right now, that's the predicament. The Mets right now are interested in players who are waiting out the market. Now, Bregman. Last week, we heard all the things about the Mets are interested in Bregman. They could possibly sign Bregman and move Mark Vientos over to first. My opinion, I was trying to look at it as fairly as possible and say, are we looking at Bregman? Does David Stearns honestly want to pay a 31-year-old third baseman close to $200 million? Is that the plan of David Stearns? Well, the more and more you look at it, the more and more it looks like David Stearns and the New York Mets were trying to create leverage. With who? Who are they trying to create leverage with? I believe they were trying to create leverage with the Pete Alonso, Scott Boras camp. Because I don't think Scott Boras and Pete Alonso have many suitors. I really don't. I think it's Pete Alonso. I think it's Pete Alonso and Scott Boras basically playing the Mets against the Mets. Really, you heard possibly the Yankees are interested. I don't think they're interested. You heard possibly the Cubs are interested. They just shed payroll. They got traded already for Kyle Tucker. I don't think they're interested. Who is interested right now in Pete Alonso? I mean, I think the market really is bare on him. It's the Mets playing the Mets. So the Mets are going to wait this out. They're going to be smart. But in the meantime, it looks like, the Mets aren't really doing much. So they make these tertiary moves. They add depth. You got the Jose Siri playing center field. You got you got 6, 7, 8 starters. You got guys who could be the 6th, 7th, 8th starter, but we still need that top of the line rotation help, which I'm very confident that it will come. Very confident, because then I go back to that Soto thing and what Steve Cohen and the New York Mets targeted 2025 as the year they're going all in. Explosive, you're right. There was a report the Yankees are in on Bregman and Pete. Well, quite honestly, and you saw this, Explosive, there has probably been, the Yankees have been linked to just about every player. And having the Yankees linked to particular players is what agents want. Agents want these big market teams linked to players, just like, Scott Boras wants the Mets linked to a Bregman. Scott Boras wants the Yankees linked to Bregman. Scott Boras wants all the upper, teams, teams like the Mets that have a lot of money, teams like the Yankees that have a lot of money. It makes a lot of sense to have these teams linked to respective free agents. But, how much stock do you put in predictions? How much stock do you put in these actual reports? I don't really do it. I don't really put a lot of stock in these reports. If you put a lot of stock in particular reports, you had Soto going to the Blue Jays, you had Soto going to Boston, you had Soto going to the Yankees. I mean, you had crazy stuff. Soto going to the Giants. I mean, there was ridiculous stuff. But at the end of the day, it's what makes sense. I don't think Alonso is going to sign with the Yankees. I don't even think the Yankees are going to sign Bregman. I'd be surprised if the Yankees invest 8 years in Bregman. I'd be shocked. I mean, honestly, if they did that, that would scream of desperation. Scream of desperation. The one thing that I do give the Yankees a heck of a lot of credit for, besides being aggressive, is having the ability to have all these pitchers available to trade. I mean, they got Juan Soto last year by trading away Michael King, Drew Thorpe, a couple other players. Then they were able to get Devin Williams by trading pitching talent away. So, I mean, you give them credit to have all these pitchers available to trade. I mean, you trade 2 starters last year and you still have 6 or 7 decent starters. So, I mean, that I give Cash a little credit for. But right now, quite honestly, if I had to pick a team and pick a direction, I'm still picking Juan Soto and the Mets, hands down. Juan Soto and the Mets. I mean, you got Aaron Judge, who's 33 years old. He can break down at any moment. The guy's 6'7". Got one of the most talented guys in baseball, but it's kind of Mother Nature. Yeah, Justice, I saw that Nolan Arenado vetoed a trade to Houston. Nolan Arenado right now, apparently what he wants to do is go to a place that's almost a guaranteed win. So he'll go to the Dodgers. He'll probably go to the Yankees. He'll go to the Mets. Houston, they just traded away Kyle Tucker. They're rumored to trade away Framber Valdez. They're not in a position a 34-year-old Arenado wants to go to. And Arenado, I would not touch him with a 10-foot pole. The guy last year dropped off a cliff. Yes, he's a decent third baseman, but I just wouldn't touch him. I don't think he would really significantly help out the team, whether the Mets or the Yankees. If the Yankees went after him, that's another, in my opinion, desperate move. That kind of reminds me of Josh Donaldson. I mean, I would say Arenado's better than Josh Donaldson, but they acquired Donaldson. He was decent, then he was dropped off a cliff. I could see Arenado continuing that trajectory and, not doing well. On paper, I think the Yankees are better than last year. I think their pitching rotation is better than last year. Their lineup right now, as of right now, is not quite as good. They lost Gleyber Torres. They lost, obviously, Juan Soto. Their big addition right now is Bellinger. So lineup-wise, they're not better. Obviously, they got Max Fried and Devin Williams. So they've improved their pitching overall, but not their hitting. Does that make them a better team? I would say right now they're about even last year. They're about even. But you know what? The next couple moves, if they start getting a Christian Walker, if they make 2 or 3 moves, like you mentioned, if they get a Santander, I would agree that they would be better. But look at that. They got to make like 5 or 6 huge moves to overcome the Soto thing. And you know what? They to give them credit, they're not standing pat. Like imagine this. Imagine, and I was saying to a couple of people, thank God the New York Mets signed Soto, because David Stearns, is he the type of GM? Would he be able to pivot and get these type of players? Like David Stearns, he builds his team very methodically. Like I said, he's a very patient guy. I don't think he would attack the market. It's just not David Stearns' philosophy. He's a guy that in a trade, he'll rip you off, but he will rarely get ripped off. That's just not how he plays. He always deals from a position of power, a position of strength. A couple of years ago, we had all those desperate trades at the deadline where we traded for Javier Baez, traded away Pete Crow Armstrong. We've always been kind of desperate at the deadline. David Stearns will never operate out of desperation. You just saw it this year. Imagine maybe David Stearns was a bit more aggressive or a bit more willing to give up, our prospect capital. Maybe, we could have got another pitcher or two. Maybe that could have helped us out more for the World Series run. But the trade wasn't there, at least value-wise. So David Stearns, he got a Blackburn. He got a Jesse Winker. Winker, I think he was a great addition. But these guys weren't, all-star players. These guys weren't guys that you had to give up the farm for. David Stearns didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. So that's his philosophy. See, I think you kind of pose a good question here, because I think that if the Mets win the World Series, this will never be an issue. This will never be an issue. Like, you hear David Stearns has this small market philosophy, right? He acts like a small market GM. But you know what? If you think about it, it kind of makes sense. He was a small market GM for all those years. So was he overnight just all of a sudden, okay, I'm going to acquire all the big fish? No, I think he still has all the tools that he's developed the last 7-8 years, but he can mix in these big moves here and there. But still, he's going to stick what works. So, but I do agree. If the Mets don't win this year, they don't win next year, it's going to come back to bite them. I think the fans, they're not going to give them 3 or 4 years saying, yeah, sign Griffin Canning, sign all these guys who really are borderline major leaguers. I don't think it's going to be okay. I think we, in the future, if this doesn't work, and this is actually, I kind of say what I feel. So this is kind of what I think that Brian Cashman had trouble with 5 or 6, no, not 5 or 6 years ago. 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, right before he acquired Garrett Cole, I feel Cashman had a pretty decent team, but he never paid extra money for that starting pitcher. He always thought that he could develop his prospects, but I always felt that he was a bit more aggressive. The Yankees could have, won in 2017, won in 2018, but he was a bit stubborn. So, I hope that if things don't work out and the move is there, that David Stearns isn't stubborn. But that's where I think that having an owner like Steve Cohen will always make sure that we're going to be opportunistic. So, that's why I feel a little better. Brian Cashman was almost the sole voice in the Yankees organization, whereas the Mets, they have multiple voices, as we saw in the Juan Soto sweepstakes. Crispy, you're right. David Stearns got lucky this year with guys like Minaya and Severino. Signing cast swifts every year is not going to pay off. Currently, the Mets don't even have a number 2, let alone a number 1. Wow. Well, the good thing is, I guess you could say that's debatable. It depends how you consider Senga. And then a guy like Holmes, could Holmes develop? What's his ceiling? Can he be a number 3? Could he be a number 2? But at the end of the day, you can't rely on Senga to be a number one. He's got that injury history. So, that's a question mark. And, Holmes is a project. So I agree with you right now. I would say that they have a couple 3, 4, and 5 starters, but, it'd be a stretch to say Senga's a 2 at this point. But that's where I'm still confident. I'm still confident that the Mets are pursuing heavily a Castillo. And eating that contract, I think, will be a major luxury. I don't think teams trading for Castillo are willing to eat most of the contract. I really don't. I mean, what are teams that would eat the whole contract? Maybe the Dodgers, maybe the Yankees. I mean, the Yankees wouldn't do it because they have a bunch of starting pitchers, and the Dodgers are over the last luxury tax threshold. So that would cost them double. So if they eat $20 million, it would cost them almost 40. So I don't see them doing that. And I mean, I'm not really sure what other teams are interested in Castillo. The Red Sox are probably interested, but the Red Sox, they've been always kind of cost conscious. They know they're going to have to pay Crochet. So I'm not sure they would want to eat the whole contract. So that's the one advantage that the Mets could do. They could eat a large percentage of the contract. Hopefully that will limit the amount of prospect capital that the Mets would have to send out. Wow, I saw actually a crazy article today. A crazy article. All right, I can't find it. But basically, this is what the article said. It was a trade prediction between the Oakland A's and the New York Mets. And it basically said that the trade would involve the New York Mets shipping Starling Marte to the A's, and that the A's would eat a large portion of the contract. And since the A's were eating a majority of the contract, that means they can get an additional prospect. And that additional prospect would be Brett Beatty. So I'm like, this is nuts. This is the A's, who literally have one of the lowest payrolls in all of baseball. And this author is recommending that they're going to eat the contract so that they can get more value back from the Mets. It's just insane, because that's what the Mets should be doing, not the Oakland A's. So I'm like, hopefully David Stearns could use our number one weapon, our money, to extract, a better trade, extract something. So, I mean, I'm hoping that happens. But I'll be honest, it's been very frustrating. It has been very frustrating. I put out a video the other day, titled Stubborn, with regards to David Stearns. Hopefully he's going to turn it up. Like I said, I got to believe he will, but it is frustrating waiting for this man to pull the trigger. Only reason why we got Soto was the money. Whoever gave him the most money was going to get him. He's a hired gun. Well, if you look at what the Mets did, look, I don't think it was all about the money. I really don't. It was $5 million away from the Yankees, and was like a couple $1 million away for the Blue Jays. So the money was really, over the course of 15 years, was pretty much the same. The Mets did some crazy things for Juan Soto, and that's why. And there was this article that detailed all the crazy things. That's why I have confidence in getting a guy like Roki Sasaki. The Mets supposedly, and it's really tough because the Mets are behind the Dodgers and they're behind the Padres. Those two teams are supposedly the favorites. But the Mets do a very good job appealing to the players' needs and wants. They do a very good job. With Soto, in Soto's case, it was family, all about family. So what the New York Mets did was they did a lot of things to accommodate his family. They gave his family a suite, paying $1 million so that his family can go to the game, number one. Number two, they literally, and I couldn't believe I was reading this, they gave his mother some type of a stipend for clothing. Yeah, I'm not even sure if I read that right, but they gave his mother some type of stipend. And in the list, there was a long list of things that Steve Cohen and the Mets did to accommodate the family of Juan Soto. And I thought that was amazing. I've never seen anything like this, because usually you'll hear everything the player gets, but you never hear a list of things that the family got. And you saw that with the Juan Soto thing. And that's why if the Mets can internally, they're probably going to do their homework on Roki Sasaki big time. Already, I know, it's public knowledge, David Stearns has been over there to visit Roki Sasaki already. So that he's visited him, he scouted him, and that they're going to move heaven and earth to figure out how this guy ticks and what this guy values. Already you hear that the guy values, he wants to be in a kind of a big market. He wants to be in a place where he can get endorsements, right? So that's got to be a big selling point. Being in New York City, a team like the New York Mets, Dodgers, that would be your competitor. LA, yes, that's a big market as well. But, who are all the endorsements going to go to? You're going to give it to Shohei Ohtani, or you're going to give it to Roki Sasaki? So, there's less competition in New York City in terms of the Queens. So I think they're going to do a great job at putting a presentation together for Mr. Roki Sasaki. Now, whenever they do meet, and I said this for the Juan Soto thing, I really hope the Mets are the third or fourth team meeting with Roki Sasaki. I said it was important back then. I'm going to say it's important now. You're going to find out, and you're going to learn lessons from meeting one and meeting two. I forget. With Juan Soto, was it the Blue Jays? I think it was the Blue Jays or Red Sox. Blue Jays met first. Red Sox met second. In my opinion, it's never the team the guy signs with that meets first. Always the players leave the best towards the last. So I'm hoping I see the Mets aren't number one. I think in the Yamamoto sweepstakes, the Mets were number one. Ken Rosenthal today said on his show, Dodgers and Padres are the clear favorites for Roki. And obviously that doesn't even make sense, because two teams can't be the favorites. One team could be the favorite. So if we're going to go with saying two teams are the favorites, then you lump in the New York Mets in there too, because only one team could really be the favorites. A guy can't sign in two different places. And, I heard all throughout the Soto sweepstakes, the Yankees are the favorites, the Red Sox are the favorites, and from guys like Ken Rosenthal. So, that's not the end all be all. That's just basically their prediction as of today. And, that means very little. It really seems like this day and age, agents are doing a lot better and better job keeping their clients' desires in terms of teams they want to go to. They're keeping that a lot more private than in years past. And it makes sense, because you want everybody, all the teams, to be interested. I guess in Roki Sasaki's situation, it's not a typical, it's not a free agency thing. It's not like the guy can get the most money. It's just dependent on where the guy wants to be and where the guy wants to play. Richard, what's up? The Mets need to get on the ball. Yeah, that's like kind of like the gut punch reaction from this initial signing, Griffin Canning. But this is just a David Stern signing. There's got to be more to come. There's got to be more to come. I'm hoping like in 2 weeks right now, we're all laughing and, the Mets got this guy, a couple of different players. I mean, if the Mets get a Luis Castillo, a Dylan Cease, I'm telling you, the fan base will feel so much more confident. I'm going to feel so much more confident. And then once we get that one pitcher, I still think we need two top echelon pitchers. We need two. If the goal is to win a World Series, and I'm not moving the bar is set clearly. You go out and you get a Juan Soto, the bar is World Series or bust. If you're going to pay a guy a world record contract, that's what the goal is. The goal is World Series. So I'm not going to let them lower the bar with these, Griffin Canning moves. If it's a depth move, that's fine. If this guy, has the ability to cover double headers or whatnot, that's fine. I know there's a lot of teams that do this, but it just seems like the Mets signed so many guys that, were out of baseball at some point recently. And then, the Mets signed him. Like, Jared Young, that was one of the guys that they just picked up who supposedly can compete for a bench position. Very limited major league experience. The guy is already 28, 29 years old. He's 29 years old. He's going to be 30 next year. I mean, this is the guy that you want competing from your bench spot. You go to the Dodgers. They have a bunch of proven, talented guys. That's you really like question. Like I go from trying to be patient, and then trying to say what the hell is going on. I mean, why even waste your time and any money on some guys that have no chance at being productive? But what do I know? I'm not a MLB scout. I'm not an expert. Bro, I'm lefty and 46 years old, but can still throw 83 tops. Maybe I have it. You know what? Honestly, that's the philosophy. That is the David Stearns philosophy. As long as they could sign you for a cheap price, I'd say, you know what? Maybe. It's really funny. I mean, we just signed Juan Soto. We just signed Juan Soto and we're shopping. It seems like we're bargain basement shopping. That's what it feels like. You would think right now it'd be pedal to the metal. We got Juan Soto. Let's add on. Let's get Pete Alonso in the fold. Let's get, if you're having trouble figuring out certain things, all right, you can always re-sign Manaea. That's not going to cost you any draft picks. That's why I don't understand. Do they want Manaea? I thought Manaea was a great clubhouse guy. I thought Manaea really took strides as a major league pitcher. He showed his potential to be, a solid number two. But still, what is the problem? Money? How can money be the problem? But that's where I sit and I wonder. I know, and then I'm like looking at the Mets tax situation. Like, are the Mets trying to stay below a certain number? Are they trying to stay below the Steve Cohen tax threshold, which would be around $300 million? Like, what is the goal? What is the plan? The Mets have already been above the CBT tax penalty threshold 3 times already, so they're going to be taxed at the highest level right now. So, and I don't think they're trying to reset it this year. I doubt they're trying to reset it. So they got to be all in. They got to be all in. I could probably get it to 90 with some good pitching coaching. Yeah, the funny thing is, I watch these YouTube videos about like these pitchers and all these different like not radar guns, but like analytics. It's pretty, like, if you have some type of arm talent, it's actually pretty cool these days, like the technology they have. So I can imagine like the pitching lab, what David Stearns has. And I was reading this story about, how they were touring there was this group touring the Brewers facility in 2019. So, this group of, I forgot, of media, they were touring the Brewers facility, and they wanted to see David Stern's pitching lab. They wanted to see what that was all about, because I guess it was a big thing in Milwaukee. But at that time, it was so damn top secret that these media people who are all credentialed, they weren't allowed to see. So whatever this guy is doing, it seems like it's proprietary. Like, because at that time, I'm like, okay, if all the teams or some of the big market teams are doing similar things, but it seems like the Mets have their own specific pitching lab with their own processes and things in place that are different. So if they feel that they can turn anybody into a solid pitcher, all the power to them. All the power to them. And you did see David Peterson. David Peterson did look like he took it to the next level. Sean Manaea definitely looked like he got a lot better. Luis Severino, the guy stayed healthy all year. So I gotta say, in year one, pretty effective. Phil Maton, a guy who was a journeyman his entire career, looked like he was a decent 8th inning setup guy. So maybe there's something really solid there. Well, I was suggesting a Manaea just to get somebody proven, but it wouldn't just be a Manaea. I'd want to sign Manaea and a Castillo. I'm looking to sign at least 2 to 3 starting pitchers, because look at what we did right now. This guy that we signed tonight, I don't count him as being a part of our rotation. Frankie Montas, he's a number 4, number 5. I preferably a number 5, number 6. And then you got a guy in Clay Holmes that is transitioning to be a starting pitcher. So you can't really rely on him. You got Kodai Senga, who was out all of last year. So there's still a lot of holes. There's still a lot of work to do if you want to make this a solidified World Series contender. All right, so this is I would say my dream scenario. My dream scenario right now would be get Castillo, get Cease, and sign Sasaki. That would be my dream scenario. Obviously, a lot of things would have to happen for that to come true, but that would be my dream scenario. And if that happened, I think we can compete pitching wise with any team. If you have a Sasaki, if you have Dylan Cease, and you have Luis Castillo. But the Luis Castillo and Dylan Cease moves would have to be made prior, obviously, to Sasaki signing. And if you make those moves, at least you show Sasaki, hey, you're going to be part of a great rotation. I think if we don't make any legit pitching moves, I think we have no chance to sign Sasaki. Why is Sasaki going to want to be here and be the only quality pitcher? So, from what my perspective is I want to sign a Cease and I want to sign Castillo as another selling point to sign Sasaki. Well, the thing about the Padres is that that's a team that's always willing to listen. They're always willing to wheel and deal. I mean, obviously, trade for Soto one season, one off season, and then trade him the next year. So I mean, they're always willing to listen. Obviously, they traded for Cease last year. They may want to recoup some of that capital if they don't think that they can sign him next year. That might not be a crazy thing to understand that they want to trade him. I don't know how willing they are want to trade him now. Maybe they might want to wait to the trade deadline. But the Mets got to get creative. At the end of the day, the Mets have to get creative. I thought David Stearns was a guy that was going to, all of a sudden you were going to see trades happen or moves made. And you're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I mean, we're paying the guy $11 million. The guy's supposed to be a baseball genius executive. Is it too much to expect a little creativity? Like if you go to baseball trade values, so that's like the website where you could basically calculate, how much each player is worth in a trade. So they have like mock trades. So and they have real trades. So the trade for the Yankees got Bellinger, they got Cash, and they traded Cody Petit to the Cubs. So the value that baseball trade gave Cody Bellinger was negative 6.4, negative 6.4. So the more valuable thing that the Yankees got was Cash. Cash had a value of 5. So the Yankees got back a total value of negative 1.40, and Cody Petit had a value of 0.9. So essentially, Cody Bellinger had zero value according to this website. Dylan Cease, just out of curiosity, he has a value of 33. So he's got pretty decent value. Oh, let's see where you are. I heard something like Japanese players doesn't like to outshine one another, especially on the same team. So guys have a good shot at Sasaki because he would not be overshadowed or overshadowing. Well, I mean, I guess it's different for every player because Yamamoto went to the Dodgers with Otani. But it's got to be different for every situation. Every situation's got to be different. But I'll tell you what. I would tell you what. In terms of signing Sasaki, besides bolstering your rotation, the Mets have a lot of pluses, and the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. I think the Soto situation, the Soto signing dramatically influences Sasaki, dramatically, in my opinion. Like Soto makes the Mets a destination that is geared toward winning, and then you hear Soto in his press conference saying dynasties, and then Sasaki is a very intelligent, baseball IQ guy. He sees one of the best hitters in all of baseball. Look at that, folks. One of the best hitters in all of baseball, 26 years old, similar in age, a few years older than Sasaki, just signed with the New York Mets. The Mets, known all over the world, have the richest owner in baseball who is aggressive as hell and will go after anybody. This is creating waves all over the world. And talk about expanding the brand. Obviously, Soto helps. He helps a little expand the Mets brand. And how much is that going to help with Sasaki? I do think it plays a factor. It's going to play a factor. And the Mets being that it team this offseason, you had Otani follow Yamamoto, and then I've mentioned other situations where, plays have followed another star, in basketball. There have been many, LeBron and Chris Bosh, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in New Jersey. And then obviously last year we had Otani and Yamamoto. This year, are we going to have Soto and Sasaki? It sounds nice. The Mets, therefore, could have the best bat of the offseason. And if they get Sasaki, they could have the best arm. And, I for all of you who didn't get a chance to see my last video, I did a really in-depth scouting report on Sasaki. The kid has crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. He's, they grade pitches from 20 to 80. His fastball is 80. Averages upper 90s, fastball 100 to 102 miles per hour. It's got crazy stuff. And they said the great thing about his fastball is it's got rise on it. Rise, kind of like the Jacob DeGrom pitch. The kid is 6'6", tall guy. His second best pitch, got a splitter, nasty splitter. It's got 10 inches of drop, and then he's got a slider. So this kid's been compared to Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens. I expect Steve Cohen, David Stern to pull out all the stops for this kid. All the stops. This is, I expect this kid to be better than Yamamoto. Despite him throwing over 100 miles per hour routinely, he's got a very smooth, effortless delivery. Really, and the mentality on this kid, for only 23 years old, he's, beyond his years. He's, and the control also is there as well. So all the facets, all the things you look for in a good young pitcher, this kid has the whole package. Chaz, and you're right. And I'll tell you something else. If I'm Pete, I would be really pissed at the Mets. He's looking over at Soto getting $800 million over 15 years, and he has to haggle with the Mets for a decent payday. I got to say this. I got to disagree on this respect. You are only worth as much as what the market is willing to pay you. Your worth is what the market is willing to pay you. In the Juan Soto sweepstakes, we saw that there were 12 teams initially interested. Then there were 8 teams that were interested at $500 million level. And then you had 5 teams willing to pay over almost $700 million. So, it wasn't just the Mets, it was the market. Now, if the market said Pete was worth $200 million and you had 3 or 4 teams bidding, then, that's another story. But at this point right now, apparently the market is dry. The Mets aren't just going to give Pete Alonso money because he's Pete Alonso. They're going to give him money based on what he's worth, what he's worth right now. It's a business. If it wasn't a business, then, I'd say, yeah, he's a homegrown prospect. Give him whatever. But it's not really like that. Yeah, it's not going to make him feel better, but I'm not really sure if they're concerned about his feelings. Business is not always about making the guy feel happy. It's about, making the team feel happy. So, Richie, you're right. But what has Pete done for the team lately? So, I think Pete did, something really great, really great. Okay, we know he did. He elevated his game in the playoffs, big time. But that home run that he hit against the Brewers, that home run that he hit against Devin Williams, really allowed the Mets to elevate their status. Really, it did. It elevated their status. They came 2 games short of the World Series. 2 games short of the World Series. So does that influence a Juan Soto? Like, oh my God, the Mets are a lot better than I thought. They went 2 games short of the World Series. So does it help out in the Soto sweepstakes? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Money probably talks at the end of the day. But in terms of, how much leeway the Mets are getting this offseason, if the Mets get knocked out in the first round, I'm pretty sure the fan base would be a lot more reactive. But I think most fans right now are saying, wow, the team really overachieved last year. They went 2 games shy of the World Series. I think Pete bought the Mets a lot more leeway, a lot more space than maybe what they really deserve. He really overshadowed a lot of the flaws. I mean, the Mets had flaws last year. They had significant flaws. But that one home run, and then against the Phillies, we had a decent series against the Phillies. Although the Phillies didn't hit, they were sleeping that whole series. But that's what I would say is Pete's biggest contribution last year, that home run. And because you're right, it wasn't normal Pete last year. Wasn't really normal Pete. But it doesn't feel like it offset what he did during the year. It's fair. It's really fair. He didn't have a great year. He didn't have a Pete Alonso year. I'll put it like that. And he didn't have a year where a guy, he's looking to be paid over $200 million. So, but I think the more important thing was last year indicative of a trend? Like, is he going to go down from here, or was it just a blip on the radar? Because that's what the Mets right now. I think they're trying to pay him like that production was last year. That's what I think they're trying to pay him. They're trying to pay him like that is going to be his production, or he's going to have lower production. Because if they believe he's going to be a 45, 110 RBI guy, then you would have to pay him closer to $30 million. The Mets aren't trying to do that. So I guess that's where the struggle is right now. Do you believe Pete is going to be that, 34, 88 RBI? Those were his stats last year. Or do you think he's going to get back to that 40 to 45 home run guy and not get 110 RBIs? Because then he's closer to worth $30 million. So that's probably where they're trying to figure out. This is an interesting one too. Maybe Stearns will pass on Pete to go after Vlad in 2026. So, I mean, obviously, I would say the big thing is what is Cohen's appetite to put another monster contract on the table? We know already Stearns and Cohen's approach is they're willing to pay offensive guys, right? They're willing to pay offensive guys. But let me just see. Like, so I think Vladdy's going to be 27 next year. Okay, so yeah, if we sign him, Vladdy, like he'll debut for the Mets. If we sign him, he'll debut as a 27-year-old. So he's pretty young. He's a year older than Soto. Um, he's, in my opinion, he's an overall like better hitter than Pete, right? Pete's got better power. Pete's got better power, but everywhere else, Vladdy, beats him. Vladdy's going to have a higher average. Vladdy's going to have a higher on base. Slugging, could either go to Pete, could either go to Vladdy. Vladdy's OPS is, probably going to be around the same, but it really depends. Like if you project Pete to go down, Vladdy's, he's an explosive player. He's an explosive player. But do you want to give him $500 million, $600 million? I mean, you're only probably going to have to pay Pete 150. Would you rather have, use that extra 200 or 350 million elsewhere? I mean, that's a huge question, a huge question. I mean, the lineup, even right now, the lineup's going to be long. The lineup's going to be long. So I got to expect that we're going to have, a good first baseman. I think Pete's going to be back. I have pretty good confidence Pete is going to be back. You're going to have Lindor in the lineup. You're going to have Soto in the lineup. You're going to have Lindor, obviously, Nimmo, Vientos. Alvarez is a guy I think, right now you haven't heard a lot about Alvarez, but I think Alvarez is still a guy, Francisco Alvarez, who could pop 25 to 30 home runs. I think we're going to see the best of him this year. We're going to see the best of him this year. So, the Mets have like 6 or 7 guys who can hit close to 30 home runs. So, to me, that really excites me. I think they got a really dynamic offense, and Soto's going to make everybody better. Everybody better. See, this is interesting. Let Pete take a 1-year prove it contract. He is. Then I would ask this question: who would rather have? Do you think Pete would actually want a 1-year contract? Would Pete want to have a 1-year prove it contract, or would he want to be paid right now? Would he want to be paid right now? And I'm saying if he takes the payment right now, he's going to have a lower payment. So would he rather be paid lower right now or that 1-year prove it deal? My thing is, I don't think Pete's going to want that prove it contract. I don't think so, because last year, 2024, was a prove it season. It was a prove it season, and honestly, he didn't prove it. Now, the advantage to him having a prove it season this year or a prove it contract this year is he'll have Juan Soto in the lineup. So you're going to get the best of him. And if the best of him is 30, 80 RBIs, 230 batting average, then you're going to get even a lower contract next year, because Pete obviously will be 1 year older and it'll have 2 years of declining production. So there is a lot of risk in that 1-year prove it contract. I would say if he didn't have a declining year last year, but he had, maybe he hit 40 home runs, 85 RBIs or 90 RBIs, and maybe the market just wasn't great, yeah, then you sign a prove-it deal because he didn't really decline much. But now it'll be 2 years of declining, and obviously he'll be another year older. So that actually could really hurt him. Pete proved it in the playoffs. Well, no, I spoke about before how that was really great, but if you really put it in a bottle, it wasn't that much time. It was over a very short period of time. Teams want to see Pete prove it over the course of 160 games and then prove it in the playoffs. But yeah, over against the Brewers, against the Phillies, he did pretty well. He did pretty well, but if you want to be paid $200 million, you have to show that you can do it over the course of the year. And over the course of the year, we all know Pete struggled. He struggled. How many double plays did he hit into? How many times when the other team needed that big out, they were clapping their hands when Pete Alonso was off because they knew he'd swing at the pitch that was 2 feet outside. I mean, Pete didn't do himself any favors last year. And the fact of the matter was, last year, the Mets had one of their best offenses in quite a while. Vientos obviously stepped up. Lindor stepped up. So Pete was hitting in a lineup that had different weapons. Nimmo had one of his best offensive years, at least with the home runs. So, I mean, there were other options around him, and Pete still struggled mightily at some points during the season. See, and that's the thing. Vladdy will demand upwards of 600 to 700 million. I mean, I'm not sure that's going to be the number, but even if it's a $500 million figure, that's still record setting in terms of, giving a potential DH. I know people are saying Soto might be a potential DH, but I think Vladdy might really be a potential DH, giving him $600 million. But it really depends what your appetite is. And here's another thing that I think is a problem with the Pete right now. So, okay, so we all know Pete turned down that contract. I think it was 6 years, $156 million. So he turned down that contract a year ago, around that time. So the whole goal from him turning down that contract is obviously to get more money. Then signs on with a guy like Scott Boras, and I'm sure Scott Boras was like, yeah, we're going to blow that away. We're going to get you a better contract, this and that. So I think, there's pride in this too. I think right now, nobody wants to look bad. Pete obviously wants his money. Scott Boras doesn't want to look bad. So there are a lot of things right now hinging on these negotiations. But, I think the best point is right now that if the market isn't there, if Pete Alonso doesn't have the contract that he feels he deserves, then what do players do in that situation? They sign that 1 year prove it deal, or you sign a contract with an opt out after the first year. That is what traditionally players do. Matt Chapman last year didn't like what the market said he was worth, so he signed one of those contracts. But now he was able to sign a more lucrative deal. So Pete Alonso has that option as well. But, the funny thing is the Matt Chapman contract, I don't even think Pete Alonso, would sign. He would think that would be beneath him. So is Pete thinking pie in the sky, or, is the market really not anywhere near where he should be? Although that's where you get to, the second point. Is Pete going back to that 45 home run guy? Is he? Richard, when he first came up, he was hitting to old fields with power. And, his approach in the last year and a half has been, in my opinion, been abysmal. really been abysmal. And I trace it back to when he got hit last year by Charlie Morton when he got hit in the wrist. And remember last year when we had that horrible June, Pete Alonso got injured in the beginning of the month. Then he came back and he hit horrendously. I trace it back to then. His mechanics got screwed up. He was never the same player. You're right. He wasn't hitting to all fields. You know, he was trying to pull balls. He was just mechanics all over the place. So I'm hoping that gets corrected. But in the same vein, I'm also hoping that there's not like an injury there. I'm hoping that something wasn't damaged, because also another thing that really stood out to me, and maybe I'm a guy who looks at this a little too much, but his performance in the home run derby, like you really saw a different Pete Alonso from when he first hit in the home run derby from 2019. I mean, obviously he's older, but you know, it was just such a pathetic performance from a home run, supposedly slugger. So I don't know how much stock you want to put in the home run derby, but folks, he was the guy who was projected to win. He had the worst performance, and mechanically he looked terrible. And I know his pitcher was throwing the ball horribly, but you know, it just goes to show you that whole year, the 2024, Pete's mechanics had been off the whole year. And also another thing, actually, let me bring this up. Also, another thing, Pete Alonso last year had his lowest home run total, his lowest RBI total. So, you know, those RBIs and home runs, you accumulate that over the course of, you know, how many at bats you have, how many plate appearances. Yet Pete Alonso played in 162 games. So he had the most opportunity last year. He had the most I believe, plate appearances other than his rookie year. His rookie year, no, I'm sorry. Last year, he had the most plate appearances. So his numbers were the worst, yet he had the most plate appearances and he played in the most games. So, you know, I can understand if his numbers took a dip and he was hurt or something happened, but not only did he have the worst numbers, but he had the most plate appearances. So that's another thing that I kind of found a little alarming as well. And if you compare, you know, take this for what it's worth. If you compare his average exit velocity from when he was a rookie in 2019, it's a couple miles per hour less. So average exit velocity off the bat, 89.8 last year. Average exit velocity in 2019, 91.4. So he was hitting the ball. He wasn't hitting the ball as hard as he did a couple years ago. And his homer percentage last year, you know, typically, you know, by the numbers we see it, he hit 4.9 percentage of his at bats were home runs, as opposed to 2019 when he hit a home run 7.6 percentage of the time. And surprisingly, last year he actually went oppo a lot. According to the stats, he went oppo 21.4% of the time, and that was the second highest of his career. I mean, not by much. I mean, there's a couple of ticks here and there, so I mean, that's not that crazy. All right, folks. Well, we're gonna wrap things up for tonight. It's 2:30 in the morning, so getting a little late. But I just want to thank everybody as always for hanging out with me. I had a lot of fun, had a great night. Hopefully, I have a lot of confidence that we're gonna have some really good, I just say more, effective moves coming in the future. So, don't be upset about this. It's just one of those things where we got to be patient, got to be patient. So, folks, have a great night. Thank you as always. I appreciate you. Have a great night. Speak to you soon.